all right. We'll talk about that. Hello and welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. My name's Cliff.
I'm Tim.
It's October the 10th, 2021. It's Sunday. We're coming to you from, well, not live, but we're alive here in Carter County, Tennessee. And we're coming to you to talk about a few different things tonight. We've got some weird things going on in the news. We got some viewer-requested content that they wanted us to talk about. So, that's what we're going to get into.
Navigate our way through the treacherous waters, but we always find our way to the end.
That's it. And to start off, we're going to revisit something we talked about on our pilot episode, episode 1, if you will. It was about the smart poles coming in Johnson City, and we had some questions regarding those, didn't we, Tim? And we've had at least a couple of those questions answered in a recent piece by WCYB. Paul Johnson did a report there on the smart poles where he talked to Jeff Dykes from Bright Ridge about where these poles are going. It looks like they're going to go in Founders Park. They're going to have Wi-Fi. They're going to have cameras. They're going to have speakers to play Christmas music.
Oh,
yeah. So when you're getting having your stroll through Founders Park, there they'll know who you're talking to. They'll see if you like to dance to you know, God Rest You Merry Gentlemen. If you're more of a Santa Claus is coming to town kind of guy. No, seriously, they could come get a lot of information of you by walking this. And you are in a public area there. But another thing that Jeff Dykes said was, I think, pretty telling as far as what the goal is here with the smart poles. Well, I mean, he pretty much said it right out, didn't he, Tim? I sent you the video. What do you think?
Yeah, well, like you said, he pretty much mentions a lot of the information that you just gave about where they're going to go, and then he does. Well, I guess it would essentially be a puffy piece for it because it's all positive and Christmas music and stuff. But at the end, the very end, he just casually mentions smart homes.
Yeah. Was it just me, or did Paul Johnson kind of seem like he was sick to his stomach while he was talking about it? I don't know. That's kind of a creepy thing to me that the ultimate plan is we want to get you used to this smart poles and the smart cities because we want you to have smart homes. And then he casually mentioned, you know, and what more things can we get inside your smart homes?
Yep, so, inside your smart homes, like everybody already has one.
Yeah, so they want a lot of different devices calculating or capturing your data from your home. Your local power company, this is Bright Ridge, the power. I think are they a power cooperative, or are they just a completely private power company now?
Honestly, I haven't.
Or a power authority.
Into them deep enough to know Bright Ridge.
Well, they used to be the Johnson City Power Authority, if I'm not mistaken. And Bright Ridge, I'm not sure if they're completely private or how that works now. But Bright Ridge wants you to have smart appliances in the home.
I want to say Bright Ridge owns Elizabeth Electric now, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, you'd probably be right.
I might be full crap on that one. But if I'm not mistaken, the people, whoever owned Johnson City, bought the Elizabethan one because there was a big thing, because I know people that work with electrical company, and they were kind of frazzled because now their zone of where they were going to have to work wasn't just Carter County. They were trying to make them do big swaths of Johnson City and stuff. You know how far away some people in Carter County live from.
Oh, yeah.
So, I don't know. I could be talking about my booty, but I'm pretty sure Elizabethan isn't. Oh, it's not owned by the city, I'm pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure it is a private company that they source the power from TVA and then sell it to the citizens of Carter County.
So if I had big enough batteries, could I siphon... never mind, go ahead, sorry.
Well, you can
sell energy.
I think you can, actually. I think you can, in some cases, if you have solar power, you can actually sell your excess energy back to the electric company.
Oh, okay.
I think it takes you, several $1,000s to be able to meet your needs, and I think it was like $20,000 probably when I checked into it about 10 years ago. It's probably come down since then, but yeah, it's pretty neat.
Do you remember when what was his name? T. Boone Pickens? You know that guy?
Yeah, the oil.
When he was going around trying to he was giving people those big propellers. He was gifting people the big, what do you call them? The big air propellers.
Yeah, the
wind turbines. I guess you see them all over the place out in the Midwest. Yeah, and he was giving, but one turbine, it's about $1 million. Number one, and what could one person do with one turbine?
I don't know.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's almost like if people were like, what are we supposed to, thanks T-Boom, what are we going to do with one turbine? You know?
Yeah, they have to have a big field of them.
Yeah.
And they lose the transmission, the power, you lose the power pretty quickly the longer that
The
you
longer
try
it
to
goes down the
transport
wall, it diminishes, I guess.
So you have to have them pretty close to wherever you want to take the power.
Yeah.
That's kind of why hydroelectric makes sense for us here. There may be better ways, I don't know, but that seems to make sense.
I'll admit my stupidity and energy and that sort of thing. But energy and data and all that stuff getting in bed together is kind of creepy. To get us back where I take you off from.
Well, that's all right, but I guess the part that I want to focus on here is the smart home, because we were talking about in the first episode how they could use your data of who you're with, what websites you're using, where you're going, what you're driving, what you may be talking about. Now, the smart home, for those who are not familiar, there's something called the Internet of Things, which is basically all of your appliances. If you buy a smart appliance, let's start with a smart television. That smart television is not just smart because you can talk to it with your remote control, and it does what you tell it. Does what you tell it. It also has a lot of other smart features that transmit what you're doing to try to improve your user experience on that product. So you have a lot of other products in your home that work similarly, whether it be your refrigerator, Samsung and others. I'm pretty sure JVC makes one where it's a smart fridge. It looks and sees what you have in there. It tells you when you're about to run out of milk.
I've seen those. Yeah, they got cameras in them.
Yeah, they do. They look at your food. So they're looking at your food. What if you're doing a special diet? I don't know, for fertility or something, and somebody knows you're trying to have a baby, or that knows that you're pregnant, or whatever it is.
I just think like it's the same kind of it's the same sort of situation with like a value card. All of them. It's like the only reason I feel like they do that is so we can keep track of all the stuff that you're buying the most of, so we can really know the price point. We
want to see what you'll buy. That way we can advertise it for you. But then we also can keep you coming back by knowing what you might need at a certain time. We can then send you, if I'm, a shopping or a grocery store or something, and I'm sending you an email notification towards your shopping cart or to your app saying, hey, well, it's time for you to get maxi pads, Tim. Come on in and.
My phone already, because right now I'm painting a house in Bristol, and
Buy 2 for 1. Sorry.
I'm painting. No, I don't. I'm painting a house in Bristol, and so you go over there multiple times. I've been going over there about the same time every day. And my phone, after about 3 or 4 days of doing this, goes, hey, would you like to set this up on a routine? Looks like you're heading home from work.
Yeah.
And it showed me this little map of, we can guide you home. What's the quickest way from point A to point B? Do you work at the Slater Center? And it's like, what? No! It's because it's the closest business to this house. So it's not even a business, it's a government building. But, like, to me, that in itself, I know people look at that and they think, they always lean towards you're just being paranoid side of it. And yes, I stay in a constant state of it because I kind of like it. But I'm not even leaning into it as these people are going to do evil things. I don't like people knowing what I need because they're going to charge me more.
Yeah.
At the very least, you're just hurting yourself because you're letting them know all the crap that you got, so they'll know what you can't live without, so they can make you pay more for it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, I think it's kind of insidious because we've done it a little bit at a time. We started with, GPS. We didn't really think GPS is a great technology. I don't know how I used to get around without it. I remember using maps and stuff.
You remember using like Atlas to get?
Yeah. That was when I was first started driving. We did stuff use maps, and then along came MapQuest. After a few years, you could
print off like a page of steps.
Yeah, so I use Google Maps all the time. It's a great service. I guess the problem that I have with it is, as you started saying, where you have energy, you have tech, and you have your government all coming together, and it kind of leads towards this system where we're seeing implemented kind of all over the world, where if you want to engage in commerce, if you want to have a job, you have to be plugged into this system that tracks and traces your every move. And we kind of see that popping up all over the place, and they use systems like smart cities to keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, in Australia right now, they have a thing like you have to, if you get a text message from the government, you have to take a picture of yourself.
Dude, Australia's wild right now.
You have to take a timestamp picture of this,
Mm-hmm.
send it back to the cops or to the authorities, telling them that showing them that you're in your home.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not there, or if you don't send them the thing, they'll come to your house and see where you're at and start tracking you down.
And there's like crazy videos of like what was the one was a cop, and I'm not talking about like the dare officer, some guy that you think you could run to. I'm talking about like the big one that you're going like carrying a woman by her throat through the street, and she's just dangling like a child. And it's like, holy crap! Remember when Obama was in office and all these people were like, "We're moving to Australia." I hope you did, because you just you made a date with death there, didn't you?
Yeah, that's not going so well for those folks
Australia's
over there.
in trouble. That's wild.
And they're going into a lot of those same measures in Canada. They're just a little bit behind.
I think the difference is Canada likes it.
Canada's kind of nice about it.
Not the same. Yeah, Canadian people are more open to the idea of, we're all going on lockdown. All right, let's go inside.
Well, you see that in Australia to an extent too, because I saw one. There was this, this kid. I don't know, younger guy. The van pulls up with the authorities. They, say, you've tested positive for coronavirus. Hop in the van for indefinite quarantine. And he's like, okay, mate, let's go. They're like, no, where am I going? No, when do I get back? No, nothing. Who knows what they're doing with the guy? I mean, they're probably
surely
just taking.
They're just taking everybody home. But just the idea that is the thing that's going around right now. It's really like black bag scenarios, sort of reminiscent from like V for Vendetta, that sort of stuff.
Well, you see something like that, and you can't help but see the similarities.
Every time I see every time I see Trevor Noah, or anybody on Saturday Night Live, any of the talking heads that I don't understand why people are still listening to.
What happened to late night comedy, man?
It got taken over by Project Mockingbird. It's just
man.
But what they're doing it like it reminds me of if you look on V for Vendetta, because the theme tonight is predictive programming, by the way. On V for Vendetta, there's the TV anchor guy that's always on TV screaming, and that's the whole parody, that he was supposed to be entertainment, and all he did was get mad and scream at the camera, and she would always go, "That's enough of you," and turn him off, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what late night comedians are doing now.
Well, in George Orwell's 1984, had the 2 minutes or 5 minutes of hate every day.
With the goat head would appear in the guy's face, and they would get riled up.
Yeah, he would talk about all the things that our enemies who we weren't fighting last month, or we are fighting now, who we never fought before, what they're doing to us, why we should be so angry at them. And if it weren't for them, our society would have all these things. There'd be more chocolate rations and all this. So every day they'd stand and look at this screen. I mean, I kind of feel like that's what comedy's become. You got your guys, your Jimmy Kimmels and your...
it's just really what they're not even like.
Trevor Noah's.
They're not even trying to make you laugh, but they want to make you mad about something.
They're going for applause and they're going for outrage. And
it's like if George Carlin was stupid, is what it reminds me of. Remember he would go on those
big... If it wasn't funny.
Yeah, I never honestly thought George Carlin was funny. I know people don't like that.
George Carlin.
I thought mid-career George Carlin was funny.
Yeah.
I thought late career he got really obsessed with that whole thing if he's going to go on like a big rant. Mm-hmm. And it's cool the first couple of times, and you're like, well, I don't need a whole special of that.
Yeah.
But that's what the new late night people are trying to do. They're trying to have that Carlin effect, but they don't have any of the charm. They don't have any of the street cred.
Wit.
They don't have any of it. Yeah.
But back to the predictive programming, did you see in V for Vendetta? If you've not seen that movie, the synopsis for it basically is a woman gets drawn into a plot to overthrow the government after they found that, the government faked a virus to get everyone into lockdown, and then
everybody into lockdown, and they said that at the very end of it. Well, I think there actually was a virus. It's just the what thing that actually came out was they made it.
They made it and leaked it.
And the guy, I guess V would be his name. He's coming after him because he was one of the test subjects that survived.
Yeah. And he wore a Guy Fawkes mask, and Guy Fawkes was like a religious extremist who didn't like the way England was going, so he decided he was going to try to, blow up the Parliament. Yeah, with all the
gunpowder treason plots.
Yeah,
what they call it.
That's right, and that was November 5th. That's why they say in the movie, remember the 5th of November. But as we get back, I think it's pretty obvious to where as one might say, I feel like we're living in that, and in a lot of ways, we're kind of living in a lot of those.
I think it's like how you see like the sacred geometry swirl of dystopians that swirl each other. How it's actually all of them. It's not just one.
It kind of is. We got aspects of all of them, and
I think our end game is, if I could really define it, would be Running Man. Because we're almost there. Like, we're celebrating, what was it, Squid Game, which is a fictional thing. I know where people are competing for money to get out of school debt or something like that, which is super unrelatable. Just don't pay your student loans. It's stupid. Oh my, so terrifying. Student loans. I'm eating up with student loans. They're not hurting me. Stop freaking out about student loans. Just don't go to school or don't pay them. I'm just playing. It's horrible advice.
This is not financial advice, but Tim's telling you what he does that worked for him.
Yeah, there you go. I pay my student loans. I'm not garbage. That's just such a stupid villain to me. But in Running Man, I can totally see where people would be like, hey, there's people serving prison time right now for things that we don't really think are even crimes. Like, it'd be different if it's a murderer or like a rapist or something like that. But if you found out a guy was in prison because he was really good at laundering money, and he's willing to run through a death maze to get 20 years knocked off his sentence, and everybody's like, all right, let's gamble on this. And I don't really think we're that far away from that sort of stuff happening. We're already watching violence on TV every day for entertainment.
I see a lot of things ahead of their time in that particular movie. For one, the game show aspect of kind of reality TV life,
just all the time.
Yeah,
quick prizes the whole time.
For another, they deep faked that video of him.
At the end, because they didn't like the way he was kept winning. Yeah.
Well, didn't they deep fake the video of him at the beginning?
Oh,
they framed him. He never actually killed the people that they said he killed in the movie. Mm-hmm. He wouldn't do it. He refused orders to fire on a food riot, and so you got food riots. That's going on in a lot of places in the world right now. You got a lot of things being scarce in the grocery store, supply line shortages, a lot of things like that going on. Deep faking was something that came in about the last. Really, it came into its own about 5 years ago when you had what's that guy's name, Bill Hader, that they had doing the Jim Carrey.
Bill Hader, yeah. He's a Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball voice guy.
Yeah, so they had him do an impression of Jim Carrey, and somebody put a Jim Carrey head on it and deep faked it to make it look, and it looked just like Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of other examples of that coming, but you can really see some videos that look like somebody is doing something that they're really not doing.
They're getting like scary good too.
Oh yeah, and that's what they did in that movie is show a video of him massacring people. Mm-hmm. Then they put him into the Running Man game, which is where he can win his freedom by going through this gauntlet and facing off with these gladiators everybody's kind of in the same boat. They're all kind of pitted against each other and stuck where they are. And it's all being played by, overlords who, at first it looks like it's just for money, but then it's more about control of the population and having everybody be invested in that show.
It's really reminiscent of the Gladiator, as he slowly wins the people over.
You're right.
As he shows that this... Because they're so used to just watching criminals get their butts kicked by the gladiators, with that people are they're actually rooting for the killers, and then as he starts beating them, it pisses them off. So they deep fake that next video to make it let's just take him out of the scene. We don't like how he's winning too much. You got to control people's emotions a little bit better than this.
That's right. If you hadn't seen the movie, they end up faking that the hero loses in battle, and they take him out of the way. Now you'd really just have to watch the movie. You won't know what you're talking about.
I always thought that was odd because it's not a horror book.
He wrote it under the name Richard Bachman. Yeah, it is a horror book, kind of. It
looks like thriller, but in reality, it's more of a
there's not a supernatural aspect to it, but it's kind of more horrifying than his books, something like it.
A totally innocent person could literally just get getting shafted the whole way because everything's just rigged against you.
Because he decided to do the right thing, the whole system went against him, and through everything it had, and the idea of him coming out on the top. That's why that movie resonated with people so much. Then that's why it resonated with the crowd in the show. Mm-hmm. And now that you bring up Stephen King, it makes me think of a little more predictive planning with the book The Stand and the miniseries The Stand. I haven't seen the new one. They redid it.
I haven't seen it either.
With I think Paramount or one of those streaming networks did it. where they redid it. It's had mixed reviews. I've not watched it yet, but I
Did
really
one Idris Elba in it's like the Dark Tower?
no. He was in the Dark Tower. I don't know about,
Okay.
and I did really like him as Roland. I thought they
Okay.
they
I haven't
really,
watched that one. Yeah, that's a good.
I thought they
that's a good
really
cast on that.
screwed the pooch on the movie, but I
You
did
thought he was
like.
cast well though.
Yeah, I did like
Okay.
him, and he played the part very well. But The Stand, though, was a story of a government. I think it was the American government lab in the Midwest that let out a virus that started, killing. In this case, it killed, everybody, but a fraction of a percent. Almost everybody in the world except for certain people who were immune, and they kind of started splitting up into factions and camping out in different areas of the country while they built up their strength in preparation for a final battle with one another, putting themselves in the camp of good versus evil in the movie. And I feel like we kind of when we were first starting, with the pandemic was really first starting back early last year, it was about the time that this movie production was coming out. So I thought it was very oddly timed. And then they also had a movie or a Netflix show called Utopia. And if I'm not mistaken, they actually took it off of Netflix because it was freaking so many people out. But evidently the plot of Utopia, or not Netflix, Amazon Prime. But the plot of it involved a madman who basically released a virus to get everybody to take a vaccine that he basically controlled for nefarious purposes. And that came out right around the time.
Makes
of
you
the beginning
wonder
of the
if
pandemic.
the world is inspiring creative people to do it, or if creative people's minds are just a little bit further ahead, and so we tend to write ideas down before bad people do them.
Yeah, you wonder.
Yeah.
And then I see things like the Bible. A lot of people will point to events and prophecies being played out, and I think, yes, I can see where you get that. But at the same time, that Bible's been written, and it's like the most circulated book in the world. And so people are who believe in that are going to move towards that. And, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will.
I think the wisdom it's
Or it could be. No,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that those people are wrong, but I just feel like if the game plan's out there, makes it a lot easier to follow.
Well, I think
it.
it's like reverse theory, in my opinion, because I think, okay, it's almost like, I'm trying to think of a way to say this without sounding like an idiot. I'm just gonna sound like an idiot.
Just do it.
It's almost like the whoever's, the overlords, we'll call them that,
Okay.
whatever. You can't get people to do things if they know what's going on. So you have to, it's only like controlled opposition, like Noam Chomsky and all that stuff, where he, essentially if you use that theory, which, essentially if you use controlled opposition, you have to say that if you make the U.S. military also has to create its own enemy. That way we at least get to decide who we're fighting.
The Gallian dialectic thing.
And so in that regard, if you're going to do both of them, if you need to control your own people, why not give them false game plans? Because in the end, we want you to rise up and do this, and you're not going to do it unless we pretend like these guys are the bad guys. Because if I was really controlling things, like, would you want to be president? I wouldn't be the president. And if I needed the people to rise up and do a better job at running their country, I'd put the shittiest people possible in office. That way they'd have a motivation to do it. We don't have a motivation to do it. We're all just sitting around like twitching and running Twitter and whatever the hell we're doing. But
Well, you really have seen, over the last 2 years especially, you have seen a rise in everyday people from around the country. Mostly people who were inactive on the right, but you've seen people on the left. The left have kind of traditionally been always active,
very active. Yeah.
and the right kind of tends to go in spurts whenever something they don't like. The right kind of tends to want to be left alone, and the left kind of tends to want to make more revolutionary change. So they
Which
tend,
is fine when revolution is needed, but a lot of times what happens is they hijack that constant, like, I can't remember who it was. There's a political person that said that they view the anti-authoritarian people like your punks and your antifas and all that stuff almost as like a societal
They use it to move society along.
They use it incorrectly, but I'm saying as people, like, the human behavior would be there whether or not society was being controlled by it. And
Well,
so
that
we're all
rebellious-
different characters, and I think that group of Antifa people, and I know this isn't my idea, I read it in a theory somewhere, that's almost like our political immune system, and they're supposed to be the ones that are hyper-focused on the government, but what has happened is the people in charge have hijacked their own thing against them and made them stupid. Like, we're going to overthrow the government, we're going to replace it with our own government, and that doesn't make any sense. You need to let the people overthrow it, but the people that overthrow it aren't supposed to also want to become the authoritarian people. That's a mental illness.
But that's usually what happens. If you just look at history as a model.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, I guess you'd have to really get deep conspiracy on that and say that they've always been tricking people into killing themselves.
Well, yeah, I think I was agreeing with you there.
Okay.
Because if you look back to not even just the original Russian Revolution back in Red October of the early 1917, 18, the people who were involved in that revolution, once they took over, there were ones who were in power, and then there were the ones who supported them. Basically, the ones who took power had to flush out the people who supported them and help them in the revolution, because after not too long at all, they're going to realize that things aren't going the way that they were promised they would go. And these people who helped you overthrow the existing power structure, they've got the guts, they've got the passion.
Next, yeah.
They will come after you if you continue to do what the previous administration or previous power system did and continue to oppress them. So you've got to go ahead and take them out immediately. That's what ends up happening. When in most of the leftist authoritarian regimes, and right too, but I just see it most common in things like basically Soviet style communism that kind of goes around the world. They end up taking out the first wave of people to be executed are the people who helped the revolution.
Yeah, the revolutionaries are the ones who die first. Yeah.
So I don't really know how we got to that from.
Well, we're on. I guess since we're doing predictive programming, I guess you got to talk about.
Well, we were talking. I do know how we got there. It just took me a minute to go back over the map, because we were talking about the predictive programming of the stand and dividing up into two Americas, and people influencers on social media, Twitter, Reddit. It's becoming a very common discussion to see, that there are two Americas forming, that people are, basically are two camps, and, the people, it's kind of looking like it's the safety versus the freedom camp. Like, what do you value more, your personal safety and your friends and family's personal safety, or your personal freedom and your
It's causing some unlikely allies to form too. If people, I think a lot of people just assume that everybody is still on their side, and everybody that was never on their side never is going to be on their side.
Yeah.
But like right now, I've never seen so many Republican lesbians in my life. Like, just outright, hey, the left kind of dumped us. They don't like feminism and lesbians anymore, and so we're on the right now. And that's I don't want to say. Actually, I do want to say it's a good thing, because you need to mix all that stuff up to make those parties more honest with themselves and make it about policy, because the LGBT has been used as a weapon against the left for so many years. The same way they use the black vote against the left. They guilt the black people to voting for the left, and they don't give them anything. But you got to vote for them. You know what I'm saying? It's just, and they've been doing that to the LGBT for a really long time, and it actually is kind of refreshing to see some gay Republicans, if I'm being honest, because it's like, well, you got to mix that party up.
That's interesting, and you notice the really the whole. I mean, if you look at not just rhetoric, but if you look at policy, like Donald Trump, he was often categorized as far right, and his supporters were called far right. But realistically, Donald Trump's his political opinions were something along the lines very close to like Bill Clinton's in the early '90s. He was not really. I wouldn't consider him far right in any way. I would consider
him more what Obama said he was going to be and ended up not being. And I think that's the reason. I kind of started switching my political opinions around the time Obama was getting into office.
Yeah.
And I kind of went that whole presidency with not liking or hating him. It was just kind of like, well, there he is, and I don't really want to be a Republican anymore. I'm not changing to Democrat because I don't want to vote. But just watching the level of hoops and smoke screens that they jumped through to make him look great was really amazing. And you weren't allowed to say anything because he's America's first black president. You're not allowed to say anything. And I think that is one of the most tragic things ever. If they actually would have put a real representative black man in that position, you know what I'm saying? Like, if I don't even have a good example, but like, he did not. I don't think he accurately represents anybody. He was a upper class Chicago guy.
He was a product of Chicago law school, or I don't know what school he went to, but the Chicago law scene. And he went straight up to the state senate, straight to the Senate.
Yeah, he was a city planner,
2 years,
or something like that.
Yeah, did like 2 years in the Senate and straight to the White House. It's almost like he had presidential training.
Oh yeah.
Like I just imagine like there's some Saudi billionaire or Chinese billionaire out there who has a school of guys like that he adopts from places or has different.
Almost like
and he trains a bunch of them. He has a room full of like 30 guys that they know how to deliver all these lines and they know how to do all these things. And you mentioned Pete Buttigieg. He reminded me of one of those. He kind of comes from the same kind of school as Obama as far as the way he gives speeches and. So I feel like he's like comes from the same factory as Obama. He's just maybe a different mold.
He was the same kind of thing. Had that very I'm gonna stay on the like that. You ever notice the thumb? Like I don't remember who even introduced that. It was probably Reagan or something, where they're trying to give you that silent like thumb up, like trying to. And there is a book that I found. It was a pamphlet that some psychology people had written. That's how I talk. Yes, I'm an educated person, and I say it like that. The way the psychology people do it is through body language and stuff like that. They really, like, this isn't me being stupid. They really are trying to subtly make your subconscious have a thumbs up.
It's called neuro-linguistic programming.
It's like, you dirty bastards.
I guess neuro-linguistic programming is more the words that you're using, but the gestures are a part of that for sure.
Yeah.
And they do try to do, different associations. Trump did that a lot. He did a very simple version of neuro-linguistic. Oh, it's going to be terrific. Terrific, great.
Yeah, he would say things multiple times,
beautiful,
so it stick
beautiful,
in. Yeah.
Beautiful. That's a real common one when you hear things 3 times. And another real common one, like Obama used to do, is "Let me be clear."
He had catchphrases.
Yeah, he likes to get you hanging and listening for what he's going to say next. That was a trick Obama used to like. He'd say it like this.
Yeah.
And then he would.
I'd say out of all of them, probably in my time of watching presidents, probably Obama would be the best orator.
He was definitely
he definitely had the gift of rhetoric.
He left you hanging. His cadence was such that,
of course,
you were at the end of each of his sentences. You were waiting to see how he was going to finish it. Like
he had that pause, like
yeah,
and I guess it
leaves you hanging on his every word. He was great at it, and he did a lot of those little things like that too with. Repeating things, but he would space them out in his speeches. But we get back into the predictive programming aspect of we look at the country going to kind of different sides. It's not regionalized though, is it? It's kind of ideological, and it's even in your own town.
And I feel like the lockdown thing has kind of forced people to be around people they otherwise wouldn't have been around.
Right.
Texas is flooded full of California and Oregon. We're flooded full of New York and New Jersey.
Tennessee, we've had New York,
North
New
Carolina,
Jersey.
I see a lot of Florida.
A lot of California coming in lately. A lot of Ohio coming in lately. I don't remember if we were talking about this on the podcast or not, Tim, but we talked about U-Hauls being rented and coming to Tennessee on one-way trips more than any other state in the country. So we've had a lot of people coming here. A lot of people have been going to Texas. You had Joe Rogan famously went to Texas when he moved his podcast out of California. He went to Spotify and took a big check and moved down to Texas.
Went to Nashville.
Oh, did he?
Ben Shapiro's
I didn't know that.
He took the whole, and Candace Owens down there too, because he hired her as part of whatever his show's called.
Okay.
Because everybody was thinking that they were trying to connect him moving there and then that RV blowing up on that street because it happened around the same time.
Oh, okay. That's a bit of a reach for me, unless Ben.
Yeah,
Shapiro
I don't watch Ben Shapiro to get my name or anything.
Yeah, I can't stand to listen to.
He's definitely, but yeah, his headquarters are in Nashville now, and there was somebody else that went to Nashville too. But go ahead, because I can't remember.
Well, I was thinking of Nashville and that explode. Well, I just say it's a little far fetched.
Okay.
But getting into thinking of Ben Shapiro was a Bond villain somehow or something. But he'd be more like a Bond henchman. But no, back to everybody's going to Texas. You had Rogan, you had going around the Austin area. I don't know if anybody
took his whole posse with him.
Yeah, he did.
Kind of comical to me.
Well, I don't know if anybody watches Michael Malice or reads his books. He's an interesting anarchist podcaster and author and Twitter troll. He's a really good follow if you check him out on Twitter, if you do that kind of thing. But he moved down to Texas. He's a lifelong New Yorker. And basically they're saying that these cities at Los Angeles and New York have just been killed, and they're not what they used to be. They don't offer the things that they said that those people were there to experience. The nightlife, the small shops in New York are all, a lot of those are closing down, been forced out of business over the last year. So those cities are just not what they used to be. And a lot of people are moving into Texas, Tennessee, Florida, kind of dividing up among party lines. So, I mean, although there is a pretty good share of younger progressives. I guess we're around a college town, so we kind of have more of that than a lot of Tennessee in our area.
We got Boone up the road too.
Yeah, Tennessee's getting, it seems to be getting more red on the whole, because it seems like people who live in Connecticut, New York, California, Ohio, they're coming down to Tennessee because they find, well, one, I think a lot of people really liked the idea of constitutional carry in Tennessee, or unpermitted carry, because that shows that this state is more likely to be protective of gun rights than other states. That their legislature showing that that's the case. So I think a lot of people saw that and saw this as a place to go, because shortly after that you did see Texas doing that, which I would have always thought Texas was an open carry state anyway.
I think it's one of those things where it just wasn't an issue, so they just never bothered passing it.
I don't know. I just kind of always heard everybody had guns in Texas.
Yeah, I assume so too.
I've never been to Texas, but that's just kind of the stereotype we have of them. But now, Tennessee, we don't have to have a permit to carry open or concealed in Tennessee. So I think that's attractive to people, say, from maybe even New York City or something like that, who have been involved in home invasions and muggings, and it's almost impossible to get a carry concealed permit in New York City. You basically have to be a rich person or their bodyguard to be able to get one. Yeah, the private security can get them. They have so many licenses that they get through, and so I think that drives a lot of people. And you hear people, I hear stories coming out of California and Los Angeles where the sheriff's department is, home invasion. They're taking 90 minutes to show up. And they're telling the people who live in the home, well, maybe you should buy a gun. That's Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department that are telling people to do that in Los Angeles County and Los Angeles City. There's definite, I could see why that would be one thing that would draw you to our area.
Do you think some of it's like overcorrection too? Like, because I'm just thinking how I would think that if I lived in, let's say, Oregon right now, home of Pamper Chew, if you've never looked that name up, we'll come back to that. If you saw what that state is in the state of it is, and you were that terrified, even, like, I have to pretend that if I was raised in Oregon, I would be a lot further left than I already am, just because of the environment. But if I was currently terrified of my own group, would you kind of tend to overcompensate and go to a more red state than you would normally be comfortable with, just because you're so afraid that it's going to go blue?
What do you mean? If you've seen,
like, most people didn't, like, you could have gone from California and kept on going a few states over, and you would have hit a blue state pretty soon. I mean, you didn't have to stop in Texas, but they didn't. They stopped in Texas, Yosemite Sam territory, where they knew that they were going to disagree with their neighbors, and I think they did that because they felt like it's almost like they don't want the Democrats in charge anymore, but they're so programmed to vote that way that they would rather go somewhere where they know they don't stand a chance, so they can stay home and just not vote. I don't think Texas is going to go purple. I think it's going to stay red because it's full of terrified people.
It went really close during the Senate race where I believe it was 2016, maybe it was 2018, but it was Beto O'Rourke against Ted Cruz, and Beto O'Rourke running as a Democrat. I think that's the Midwest politician you were thinking of, who was really bad on gun control because he said, "Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15."
Oh, yeah. And on the internet started having that voice go, "He's a beta," instead of calling him Beto.
Yeah.
They started calling him Beta O'Rourke.
Well, I don't know if he ever did, but Biden was talking about he wanted to hire him as the gun czar whenever he became president. I don't know if he ever did that or not, but about that time, Texas did come pretty close. I think he was within 4%.
Did it go pretty blue?
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was like 52-48, which is a pretty good sized win. But you would expect Texas would be. But I don't think they really like Ted Cruz either. I think they just kind of.
Is he from Texas?
Yeah, I don't know if he is, but he's their guy. So I guess they got to pick him over a Democrat is the way they look at it. Maybe.
What in 2016, around the same time, where they were constantly getting on Ted Cruz for having like a booger on his nose, and then they started calling him the BTK Strangler, the Zodiac Killer. Like they were really giving that guy a rough time. So plus he was running he was getting the Trump treatment too.
Yeah,
that's because Trump is literally the only person that can be treated like that and be okay. And then all of a sudden you get all these soft skinned people that party up with him and they can't take it. And he's detrimental to them. He's great for himself.
Yeah.
Not so good for you when you're running next to him.
And now Trump in the primary, the Republican primary, is talking about Cruz. Like, look at this guy. His dad was around when they killed JFK. You trust the guy whose dad was around when they killed JFK? And then after Trump is president, Cruz is kissing the ring or whatever, but you kind of have to if you're a Republican now.
You're working the business, yeah.
If you're going against Trump, you're not going to be very popular in Republican politics. We saw that with guys who were standing on principle of like more libertarian kind of guys. Thomas Massey. Trump went after him as soon as he said, "Hey, we actually have to get together and vote on this thing. We can't just do it this way. The procedure matters, and having everybody in here to actually vote matters." And whatever it was, whatever the event was, I can't even remember. Probably some stupid finance bill or something like that. Where we're going to run out of funding. They're going to have to shut down the federal government.
We're running out of inches.
Yeah, they try to make you so scared of it, but they still send out your Social Security checks. It's not like that's going to stop. I mean,
it's the carrot they always dangle in front of you, the fear carrot to keep you going.
Yeah, I would be fine if they shut down some of the administrative state, for a few days. Long
they would just use it correctly. Well, I wouldn't.
It's just so huge and so redundant. We have so many things on so many levels, and it wasn't really like that until Jimmy Carter started the senior executive services in 1978, and that kind of put in place like these permanent people who serve at the pleasure of the president, but a lot of them are guys like Anthony Fauci. Who've just kind of been there. That's the guy who runs the institute.
He's 80, by the way.
80. He's been at the national. He's been at the National Infectious and Allergenic, whatever it is. NIADA. He's been there for like 40 years, and he was there through the whole AIDS crisis and kind of mismanaged that thing.
Yeah, I was surprised. Like you go to just showing you how effectively, I would say, censored the internet is about deleting comments and stuff like that now. If you get off of the YouTubers and stuff like that and you go onto just the boards, gay people hate him so much.
Really?
Yeah, because there's people that protest him saying you killed 16 of my friends died under Fauci.
Well, yeah, I've heard that AZT drug was actually what was killing all the people with AIDS.
They made a movie. It's called Dallas Buyers Club, where a guy was going around. And they just kind of leave out the part that policy of doubling up the AZT was Dr. Fauci that was doing it. And it turned out they went to court and they said doctors went to court, or whoever, what the cowboy hat guy in the movie is. Mm-hmm. He's dying of it too, but he's a straight guy, so he has to hang out with all these gay guys all the time, and that's kind of his thing. He wasn't cool with gay guys, I think, and then he got the disease and he learned, and so he's trying to help out. Like Jared Leto's dying, all this bunch of stuff. And he's just watching these guys die, and it's like his mission to just get this one policy change so he can quit watching people die. And all it was, they wanted to lower the AZT at like a dose or something like that. I could be full of shit with my info. But it was about AZT. They did need to lower the drug. It was killing AIDS victims way quicker than the actual AIDS virus was. And it was Fauci's policies that did it. So it doesn't make any sense to me that if you fuck something that bad up, why in the world are you going? Why do you get to be in charge of when if you can't handle California, the gay virus in California, where it's so, why do you get to handle the whole world when it gets a virus? I don't think you get to handle that situation.
Well, and if we look back at him from the beginning of things, he's been waffling on what to do. He's told us one thing and he's told us another. He even told us, he's like, first he's like, oh no, we don't need to wear a mask because we need to save those for the healthcare workers and it's not really going to help you. And there's no point. And then he says, well, we should be wearing masks, but I just said that because we wanted to make sure that the doctors had enough. So I lied to you about that, but now I think you should be wearing them.
I'm trying to double back just a little bit because it's not because I really do. I dislike Fauci. It's not, regardless of COVID, I just don't like the man.
Yeah.
But I'm going to try to play a good guy for just a second. What are the odds we should just not have the guy on TV so much and he's running out of shit to say? Because if you film somebody nonstop about a virus that the information isn't necessarily changing every day, we don't know that much every day, and yet you keep putting the guy on camera and asking the same questions. I don't know.
Well, I guess the problem is that he talks like he has the answers, and he's even said things like, anybody that questions me is actually, if you'll question Anthony Fauci, you're questioning science. And it's such assurance that he's right when he's been so wrong on everything.
That's a very arrogant appeal.
And he's making policies that are setting policy, and I kind of think that's one of the reasons that we've not done so well coming out of this. Is like we have a local health department, right? We have a state health department. We have a federal CDC, NIH, NIADA. That they're coming with these policies on how we treat people, how we diagnose people, and they send it all out to all these different. It goes straight from the feds down to the state health departments. They go out to the local health departments and out to the hospital practices and the medical boards and all these different medical associations in the city. Okay, but they're all doing this same policy that's come from the top, and they're not really given a lot of room to decide what they're going to do on their own. The beautiful thing about our American system over here is we're supposed to have, each state's kind of supposed to be a laboratory for doing things, and we still have that to some extent. Like you see, some states didn't really follow those things all the time, and they did do their own. And you had other states that just followed the same straight from the top. But regardless, nobody really figured out a lot of good ways to deal with the pandemic because we were all just taking our advice and treatment and everything straight from the CDC. And we really should have each local health department. They should be saying, "Hey,
almost like corporate messing up."
Yeah, well, it's exactly what it's like because your local health department, they're not really allowed to do anything other than collect data and turn it in. I mean, they can't just make a real decision because they've got to do what the state health department says.
So I think that's a great analogy, and I'm not saying I have a great analogy. Somebody made that analogy to me once, and he said, I think of the federal government as kind of like corporate, and it can't get anything right because it's too big. Like, it's almost like you can use certain things as a cookie cutter. Like, well, lots of things. You know it's going to work, but once you get something the size of the United States, you can't start cookie cutting states. I think this is something I see on the internet that gets conflated a lot too, under the very super rare chance anybody outside this area ever sees it. Other countries think of the United States as just one giant cohesive thing. Like it's one country. Like if you just took Russia, or if you took Japan and went, it would just be one giant Japan, and those people wouldn't eventually be all different cultures and stuff.
Right.
I mean, every state is different around here, so the idea that we could cookie cut 50 different groups of people is insane.
Well, we're almost like Europe, and although we're kind of regionally divided into cultures more than each state is not necessarily. I mean, we're pretty similar. Let's say to Kentucky, West Virginia, South Carolina, somewhat to North Carolina, parts of Virginia. Yeah. Our region, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, we're kind of similar in a lot of our policies and a lot of our laws. So, I mean, we have some differences, but then you go over to kind of the New England, and then you've got kind of a whole different outlook on things up there. So we have pockets of the other, as we discussed on one of our other podcasts, within each one. But it kind of looks like people are kind of dividing up, and people who were maybe conservative, who lived in New York, are kind of giving up on it, and then maybe people who are maybe more liberal or progressive and lived in Tennessee, maybe it's a better time for them they feel to go to Virginia, because Virginia tends to be more of a purple to almost a blue state pretty regularly now.
It's literally very well. Here's a couple of things that could affect a Virginia rush. Number one, legalized weed.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, if you look at Bristol house prices, it's an easy comparison to make right there. If you look at the Tennessee side house prices versus the Virginia side, just because of the taxes and the laws where people just don't want to live in Virginia.
Yeah.
I mean, you ever go to Virginia, you hang out in Bristol, that's all people do. You live on the Virginia side, you live on the Tennessee side, right? Because everybody's just so proud they're not paying all those Virginia taxes and stuff. So the deeper you go into Virginia past like Bristol and stuff, the land prices are pretty cheap right now. So I think people are going to start going there.
Our guest Moose from last week, I asked him once when he lives pretty close to the state line, and I thought he lived over on the Virginia side.
Is he in Tennessee?
He said, "No, Tennessee." But yeah, you're right. That's something I hear pretty commonly. Yeah. That kind of is more. It's a good mix. I mean, it's a legitimate purple state because you do have to keep your conservative population down in the Southwest. You've got to keep them happy, but then you've got kind of more progressive population up around D.C. and Alexandria. Kind of up along the Chesapeake Bay area. Now they've got a higher population there, so kind of as those places expand, they're kind of outgrowing your southwestern Virginia, kind of your more conservative vote there in Virginia.
I'm wondering, I think the people that I've seen moving to Virginia are actually Democrats, though.
That's what I'm saying. I think the conservative folks tend to be moving right here, and you were talking about the house prices going up. These house prices are still pretty crazy right now.
Yeah.
In both of our lines of work, we see house prices pretty regular, and man, I just came across a house that was like 900 square feet. It was in Johnson City, and it was right at $200,000, and it was a nice little house.
Johnson City's the highest out of the Tri-Cities right now, if you look at the housing prices.
But this was a small house with really basic, not much to it. Something you would have seen sell for $80,000-$90,000 just 5 years ago. Is now over double that. So you're saying it's not like that in Virginia? The prices are
no. The prices of houses are down.
They're down
just because there's. Well, it's the progression. It's just a theory. I could be wrong. So many people are moving to Tennessee right now because it's attractive. But at some point, I know a lot of Democrat-minded people that really would like a house right now, and they can't find it anywhere. But 30 minutes away over in, I don't know, Maryville, Virginia, whatever you want to call it, just right over there. They can go over there and buy a house for $30,000, $40,000.
And so that's what I'm saying. You see these kind of predictive programming towards a civil war, but nobody wants a civil war. None of the people.
Yeah,
I mean, you see people.
Some of them do.
No, well, I guess
some of those people got their guns.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I'm sure there's some people who do. But I think the more attractive option to me is something I hear about called the peaceful divorce. And that's kind of happening. That's kind of what we're talking about right now. If you're outnumbered, what was it, 65-35 for Trump in Tennessee? It went red, 65-35.
Keep in mind, Tennessee had some of the highest Kanye votes too, though.
They did, huh?
I think those Kanye voters might have been Trump votes.
They might have taken them away
they went to the birthday party that year.
Biden. Well, either way, the Trump numbers it was a really red state. I mean, redder than I remember, because you remember Phil Bredesen. He was a Democrat. He was our governor.
He was a governor for a while, yeah.
And he was pretty popular. But
Mitt Romney didn't do too strong here.
But when Phil Bredesen ran for Senate, who did he run against? Marsha Blackburn or I forget who he even ran against. But when he ran for Senate a few years ago, I think it was against Marsha Blackburn.
I'm pretty sure.
He got beat pretty soundly. So Tennessee's kind of gone more red since the days of Phil Bredesen, and Virginia was they used to be reliably red, and then they went purple, and then kind of as their population up into the Northeast got higher, they're kind of more almost reliably blue now. So it kind of goes to that idea of, okay, the folks who fall more in line with Virginia law and like that better, they have an option.
I think they don't like it better because nobody wants to pay. I won't go into details, but like the difference in taxes of it is significant.
It is
the way it's done.
And if you believe in that, don't you generally? If you're a more progressive person, don't you generally feel like that paying the taxes is the price you pay to have?
I think they willingly ignore something they thought. Well, I'm putting words in people's mouths because I'm being passive aggressive. Yes, if you are a liberal-minded person, then yes, you are going to be more okay with paying taxes and not really asking where it went because you think you're doing something good.
Because kind of my idea is kind of more from a minarchist or almost anarchist point of view, where I'm looking at. I would rather have a choice in everything I do, and I'm one of those guys that even says, well, that I get asked who would make the roads a lot, and because I say if the government did make the roads, there would be places who.
I'll give you a real example of that.
Walmart would build roads
Belize.
so you could get to their store. Okay, kill me that.
Belize didn't. Okay, story. You can look at Belize on your own. Just a fast. I think you'd really fascinated about. But a short little nugget of that is, Belize had no real government, and a bunch of the Amish people moved there back in the 50s, for whatever reason. And the Amish know how to build bridges and stuff because they're awesome at stuff like that. And so the government just said, "Hey, if we'll give you all the stuff to do it." The Amish and the government essentially they said, "Look, we'll pay you to do all this stuff," and the Amish wanted to do it because they needed to get all their stuff from it.
Yeah.
And so they worked in unison to make this really nice road system of very nice looking bridges and stuff in a country that is not very developed.
Well, I feel like you have. I mean, down in Elizabethton, you've got a lot of local businesses there. That if the government weren't taxing everybody around it and building those roads for them, I feel like those people would put their money in together and build a way for people to get to their stores. Now, obviously, it would be priced in their prices would go up somewhat, but it would kind of be more of a market-based reach more of a market-based equilibrium with kind of ebbs and flows as we see kind of in market economies all over the place. But that kind of gets me to one other thing that we were talking about, Tim. Basically, I'm getting to finish that up. I think what we're seeing now is a good thing because I think it avoids the worst case scenario.
You're talking about the quiet divorce being people simply just moving to.
I'm trying to finish that thought and saying I find that to be a much better alternative to something as something violent
than giving Tennessee a reason to be the volunteer state again.
Yeah, and because people here feel like their way of life is people want to infringe on their way of life, so they're coming to Tennessee to go where the like-minded folks are. And then you have people in Virginia or people who live here maybe who feel more like they'd be at home in Virginia, due partially to the influx of people coming in who feel like that. And I think both of those are valid points of view. I think you should live where you're happy and live where the government is representative of your feelings, of your beliefs. And if you come to the conclusion that your area, say if you're a Democrat in Tennessee and it's 65% red, that's an uphill battle. And just like the same if you're a New Yorker who lives in upstate New York and you're looking at 10 million people in New York are outvoting you, then a state like Tennessee's got to look attractive to you. Or even if you're in Staten Island, that's more of a red area in New York City.
I guess at one point in time it didn't matter because people didn't interact in a hostile nature enough where we could live with one another. But now that it's so vocal and everyone's supposed to be pitted against each other, now people finally have a reason to do what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest motivating things because used to you could just kind of hide some unpopular opinions. You didn't have to tell people this or that.
Yeah, and now it's almost like you wear it on your every. We were talking about on the last program about everyday. I mean, politics being injected into everything, but it used to just be. I mean, it was cultural conversations and things, but now it's like into your everyday actions. Like you walk across the street a certain way. And it could be attributed to a political, like the OK symbol. They say you're making this, OK symbol that you're doing something racist. And that, if I'm not mistaken, that was even made up by trolls on the 4chan. They said, let's pretend this is our new racist sign and see if we can get the media to say we're racist for using it. And sure enough, it did. And people have literally lost their jobs for doing it. I think
people don't understand that 4chan is such a troll factory that they will actually hurt themselves for a good time.
Yeah.
Because that was their thing. I mean, there was a lot of the military and cops and stuff. But I mean, you were playing that in high school, don't you?
Yeah, the circle game. Yeah,
you get to punch me. Why?
Yeah. You looked. Got you, Tim. But no, they kind of they politicized everyday life, and I think that Moose was partially right when he said that it's just because there's so much of it now. It is a lot different. It's like you couldn't have a recording studio in your home back then. Now you can. You couldn't have, and basically you've got a printing press and newspaper in your home now, because instead of going to the town square and having everybody see you punch up a poster on the bulletin board, or going to the newspaper and putting your letter into the newspaper and letting people read it in the paper. Now you've got social media where people are constantly doing that, and people feel strongly about their politics, and they put them out there, and there's so much capitalization to be made off of it, to where it just gets to the point of some of the people actually believe some of the bullshit that they're being fed from the leaders of these systems, and they take it out to the streets and they use it on the people around them. So it's kind of like some of it is a consequence of people being stuck in the ideology that they follow, and then some of it is a consequence of the people who create those ideologies and spread them, not maybe thinking about how far it's going to go when somebody takes that very seriously.
I think and one of the reasons, because I like to try to backpedal every now and then, and because I have a people suck mentality, and that's why I try to just come out with an air of forgiveness. I'm going to forgive these people that I don't know ahead of time for whatever bad things they're going to do, because it's almost like I don't remember what, it's an Eastern philosophy mindset that in order to keep yourself from being angry at the world, you just have to pre-recognize that the person in front of you is a scoundrel. But that's okay, because you are too. You just have to be self-aware enough to know what part of you is a scoundrel, so you don't act on it, which is kind of Jung. But that's kind of where I'm at right now, because I see everybody's just doing something really dumb. Me too.
Well, and the Christians had, everybody's a sinner, and that's.
Well, everybody's got an ideology is definitely doubling down their encampment right now, and that's. Just
I just mean the idea that nobody's perfect, and.
Yeah, man, that bothers me, honestly. Like, the idea that the core tenet of Christianity is forgiveness. And ain't nobody doing that right now. Not the Christians, nobody's forgiving nobody right now. And that's really, it's almost like we made it popular and trendy to do good things, and it backfired. Because once you make things popular and trendy, it makes people do them for the wrong reasons, and it attracts really bad people to do them. It's almost like the reason I feel like doctors and teachers and all that sort of thing kind of get infiltrated with really bad people is because it's so appealing to have that level of respect. And so it just inherently attracts the wrong crowd. And we made it that way when we said, hey, everybody, it's trendy to do the right thing. And so now we're having a competition for how right we can be without the growth that goes with being right. So we don't understand why we're right. And that's a really bad position to be in if you don't know why you're right. This is what I believe.
It's kind of like I used to give the example of if we would indoctrinate somebody, if say you were somebody who lived in a monastery, right, and you'd been raised by monks of whatever religion, and you followed those tenets perfectly, but you were never allowed to behave any other way. Are you really being a good person by following those tenets of your religion? Even if those tenets make you a good person, you never chose to actually do that. You were forced to do that and shown either punished or kept from seeing any other way to behave. So are you a good person because of that?
I think if you look at most ancient most religions, because even that's Christianity gives you an out. That's what it's about. Most religions have that whole aspect of. What did you just say?
About the blind faith and blind,
Yeah, okay, full circle on this one. The Amish built bridges in Belize. Maybe in the Mennonites.
Blind obedience, I guess.
Even they do the Rumsticker thing, where they're like, look, we know our lifestyle is a lot different from the people over there, so why don't you go out there for a while and see if that's really what you want, because you're not going to be happy otherwise. Right. And then they go out there and they go, oh, this is crazy, and they come back.
Yeah.
Because you need to show people why they're right. And that I think that's why I've kind of shut up in the sphere of talking about anything that's not music with people socially, is because I agree with what you're saying. I do think we need to stop racism. I just kind of think you're a racist because you don't understand why you want to stamp racism out. You can't replace bad actions with let's do the right thing for a bad reason, because so much of that stuff is based on revenge. Like we're playing a revenge game right now.
There you go. That's what it comes down to. Is so many people wanting political revenge and cultural revenge.
Some people are a revenge spiral. Mm-hmm. The right's doing it to the left, the left's doing it to the right.
You're right. And it's like it's one of those things. I forget who says it, but holding a grudge is like drinking poison and hoping that the person that you hate dies. Basically, you're corrupting your own heart by holding that grudge, whether or not you. Now, if you use something bad that happened to do a good, because you don't want to see it to happen to somebody else, that's a totally different thing than you hurt me and I'm going to get you back. Right. So I want to distinguish between the two things. There's definitely times when social change needs to happen, and that does take people recognizing that people are being burned or people are being abused, and something needs to be changed. And I think that's right. But what do you do when all those fights are won, or most of those fights are won? What do you rage against then? What machine do you rage against? Or is that when you start raging for the machine because you've already won all the fights? All your team is in charge now. So do you go against the machine now that they're implementing all of your ideas? Because I think we have to admit that I think in some political circles, well, we'll just say they call it the Overton Window. Basically, it's kind of the middle point of thought. The center of this country now has moved significantly to the left in some ways, and significantly to the right in other ways. You had, it's legal. Gay marriage is legal everywhere now. You've got gay, or not gay, but you've got legalized. I was going to say gay marijuana. You've got legalized marijuana in many states. You've got other states who have a more liberal immigration policy, and some states where the more that have gone the other way. So it's kind of culturally, it's kind of those Overton windows. You can say it's gone one way or the other, but it's kind of like that split too. And you'll hear people from the right say that the Overton windows moved to the left. You'll hear people from the left say it's gone to the right, but I think they're both right. They're just not seeing the whole picture. And realistically, you have factions emerging and going to places, centers of power where they can affect change more. So I think that could be a good thing, and I think it could be a bad thing. So the way that we make it a good thing is by having conversations and trying to realize that the other people who may not vote the same way or may not even think the same way as we do are still human beings. Because there's a push from people on both sides of the political aisle to have you view the other side as less than human or demonic or evil.
The demon rats is what the Democrats are now. What they call the Republicans. I can't remember what they're calling them now.
Usually has something to do with fascists or Nazis.
Nazis or fascists.
And Republicans
boring guys, I'm sorry. If you're listening to me and you like to trash Republicans, I support you. I trash both sides. Nazi, it's not a good word. It's boring. Yeah. What would you do? No, I'm not going to say that's a bad word again.
Well, I just think unfortunately, I used to have most of the things that I agreed with Democrats on, they've kind of accomplished already. Like pro-gay marriage, I'm pro-marijuana legalization, I'm pro-drug legalization.
Civil rights are used against Democrats for votes. They really are.
Most of those things that I was for, where I used to be able to say, well, I don't know if I want to vote for the Republicans or Democrats this time. The things that I liked about the Democrats, they've achieved those, and they've kind of moved on to other things that I don't really support now. And I don't, really support Republicans either, but it's almost like I don't even feel like I really have much of a choice if I'm going to vote.
I feel like the political sphere is more like a backdrop to my movie now. It's like that's all going to go on, and I can't do anything about it. I mean, not really, I can't do nothing about it, but yeah, kind of. I can't really do much about it other than sit here and talk about it on YouTube and stuff. But in the end, if I don't just keep making music and keep going, buying groceries and doing the daily grind, I mean,
Well, see,
I feel like so many people aren't doing that. So many people think that their stress is directly going to affect the outcome of the game, and it's just not.
Yeah.
I think you're abusing yourselves.
well, I personally, always fall on the libertarian, minarchist, anarchist side of the spectrum, which kind of, as I said in the past, kind of put me in the middle, about half of each major political party. But what the left still has, of course, now I still support legalization of drugs, or we should say pro bodily autonomy, as that's more what I am. I believe you ought to be able to put whatever you want in your body. You shouldn't have to put anything you don't want in your body. So I support that. But there's not a whole lot else that I feel like the left really has to offer me anymore, because most of it is about, we want to do more for you. I don't really want the government to do anything for me.
Right. Like you said, it's the two different mindsets.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm getting back to, is there's other people who do want the government to do things for them, and that's okay. They should be able to vote that kind of government in, but we ought to be able to have our way too, where I don't mean you and me our way, because I don't know how you feel about it, but I just mean people who don't want the government to do a lot for them, that ought to be an option too. And we don't have to have malice, or we can be, it can be amicable. I still want to go play music for people in Virginia. I still want people in Virginia to come here and play music to us. I still want to talk to those people. There's plenty of people I disagree with politically who are my friend, and I don't want that to change. But anyway, we basically have to get over this idea that everybody who thinks differently than us hates us, because they don't. You see that projected on television and Twitter, but it's the internet. It's really a small minority of people. Most of the people are really tired of hearing about all this crap, and they just want to go along with their lives, and they don't want to watch.
They're tired of being worried about if they say something, their own people are going to attack them.
Yeah.
Which is really stupid.
Well, yeah, that's. I guess that's what.
It's current times.
But here we are making a podcast about it. Like, so that shows a certain amount of narcissism on our level. So
has to be, yeah. As a psychology dropout, I would have to agree with you a little.
That we think anybody would care. But well, I not only do I like consuming podcasts, and I just kind of thought there was, that our area was lacking something in local content. Just low, whatever you want to call it, the base level driven. I wouldn't say consumer driven comment or content. There's not a lot of that out there, and so I thought we could put something out there. But other things is, I've had people tell me I should do that before, and the people that are interested in what I had to say, and people who ask my opinion on a lot of these topics, because they know I read about it. They know I watch these trends, and they know that I study this, and it's kind of what I enjoy. So there's plenty of people who...
People are asking for my advice. They usually want to know what kind of a dumb opinion I have about it.
Well, I guess that's basically what I mean. Not asking my advice, but asking what opinion I have. And being a conspiracy theorist has allowed me to predict the future a lot of times over the years, because I'm not really so much a conspiracy theorist as I am. I look at trends that are happening, and I project them onto where they may go in the future. And I've been right about some things, and so people asked me to start talking about it, and so that was one of the reasons. And some degree of narcissism and attention whoring, I suppose, was a piece of the equation too.
I would say less narcissism and more of, these are really boring times, and I've just decided that I'm not going to do that with my life. And if somebody says, hey, you want to have a conversation every week about really dumb stuff you already like to talk about, I would have said yes. If the videos were getting 20 views a week, I would still be doing this, because I really genuinely just like talking about stuff.
So yeah, and speaking of which, we've I checked out our YouTube Studio app, and I think several days ago when I looked at it, we had up to 300 views on the channel and 75 hours of people listening to us talk. So somebody's out there definitely, and I have people sending me texts. My buddy Crash Fistfight sent me a message that he wanted to let us know that in his opinion, the Goober Grape was fire. and that we were incorrect about that. I told him I was a crunchy man myself when I do delve into the cabinet for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But to each their own. That's what this sandwich is all about. Or that's what this sandwich is all about. That's what this show is all about. You know, which side do you fall on? Are you a peanut butter and jelly separate or a goober grape kind of guy?
I forgot about the goober grape.
We're asking the tough questions around here. And one of those tough questions is, well, for some people this is a tough question, Tim. You mentioned that lunar waves were...
that was actually what you just talked about.
Requested
yeah, it was of your request. He had been, as a fellow, been watching videos. He rabbit holes, you can fall down on them. Yeah, I think the one that got this conspiracy particularly started was a documentary called Shoot the Moon. And I think, I want to say, my times might be wrong, but I want to say the guy just sat there and filmed the moon for like a year. And they captured some cool stuff, like you can see some meteors hitting it, stuff like that. But there's an effect on the moon every now and then that you can watch it happen. It looks like it shimmers or ripples, or it looks like a wave goes across it. And you can see a jet fly past the moon. It looks like the jet goes into the moon and poofs out the other side. It's real wild looking. But the conspiracy theorists do what they do. And I try to stay in the middle on this because I love conspiracy so much. I like to be the electron without the observer effect. I believe and don't believe the conspiracy at the same time.
I see. Yeah, you could be anywhere in that electron cloud.
So that conspiracy with it's called the Lunar Wave, if anybody wants to look it up on themselves. The Lunar Wave. A lot of boring videos, I'm afraid, so I'm just going to try to break it down for you in case you're not into that kind of content. The two main beliefs of what the lunar wave would be comes from theory number one is the moon is actually made of plasma, and that comes from an interview from a scientist back in 1965 that maybe we can link in the YouTube. I'll try to remember to give that to Cliff to do. Yeah. And then the other one is that the moon has sort of, which I have a third one I'm going to introduce right now. The other one is that it's sort of like the water planet on Interstellar, when the big wave comes across, and whenever you see that shimmer, that's the wave.
Planet-wide tidal wave.
Yeah, kind of like on Interstellar where they get wrecked by that giant wave. My third one that I would interject would be a David Ickean. David Icke already thinks the moon's a projection anyway. So if it shimmers, wouldn't it make more sense that it's just a hologram?
Well,
it's not. It's a big ball of rock.
I guess.
I'm going with hologram.
I guess it's kind of hard to pick one if I had to pick. Personally, I've observed the moon a lot. In amateur astronomy from backyard with a couple.
You don't think there's any water on it?
I don't know that there is. I wouldn't be able to tell.
Enough to make a wave. How much has to be?
Well, I wouldn't be able to tell from my backyard, but it does have a steady surface that's always the same facing us, and you do have some aberrations that are caused by fluctuation of the atmosphere. I've never heard before you told me about it today that people thought that was a wave. I did briefly look it up, and one of the claims was that we only see this when we look at the moon. But again,
could that be just because stars are so small?
Well, that claim's not accurate because if you look at a planet that appears big in your telescope, like Jupiter, Saturn, or Venus, you'll see those aberrations across your view when you do those too. Now, I've never done any filming of those.
All have water on them.
Yeah, maybe. Well, there's the theory that Ganymede and Europa could have water on them. Jupiter's two of its biggest moons could have water on them. I don't know, but I certainly wouldn't be able to tell from a backyard telescope. And I don't imagine. I imagine you'd have to have something a lot more powerful to be able to
see water.
Yeah, because I don't think you can even see our most powerful telescopes on the Earth. I don't think you can even see where they left the lunar lander or the lunar rover or the planet of the flag or the astronaut's footprints or anything like that. It's 250,000 miles away on average from us. So it's a good, it's a good bit, and there's a good bit of atmosphere. And if you look at when you're observing stars and planets, in particular, low on the horizon, you got to imagine the Earth is. If we're not on a flat Earth here,
I will be a round Earther now.
The Earth is a ball, and it's surrounded by an atmosphere. So we're standing up here on this part of the ball. We're right here, and so if we look down towards the horizon to the west, we're actually looking through a thicker layer of atmosphere because we're looking down through it at an angle than if we're
Okay.
looking straight out into the sky. I don't know if that makes any sense to you on the camera there.
More dirt.
But basically, you're looking through more fluctuations in temperature, moisture, more dust in the air, clouds. There's a lot of different things that get in front of that lens when you're looking out at a heavenly body, if you're looking at it low on the horizon versus straight up. So you will see a lot of that when you do that too. Oh, and if it's hot in the summertime, you'll really see a lot of it. The more the temperature is, the more movement you're going to have, the more interaction between hot and cold air you're going to have in the summertime. Whereas in the winter, you're going to have less of that. It's going to be, the molecules are going to be less excited because they're colder. So there's a lot of different things that cause visual phenomenon that could be referred to as a lunar wave if one weren't aware. Now, I don't want to say...
if one weren't aware that it was water.
Well, yeah. Well, if one weren't aware of other... Now, maybe I'm just not aware. Maybe I'm so educated on it that I'm dumb, and I just... Everything that I've seen personally when I've been doing, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of hours of amateur astronomy,
I have zero.
It lines up with what I have read, and would have expected to see. So maybe it's just because it meets my expectations.
Typical that you would believe the narrative.
Yeah, exactly.
They wrote it right there in the book.
Exactly.
You just believed it.
Yeah, it could be, but it does match my observations and my experiences doing it. So if there is more to it, it takes definitely a higher understanding.
I'll honestly have to look in. I know the lunar wave theory. I've seen it a couple times. When my buddy brought it up, I was like, yeah, I'll look at it. But one of the issues, or one of the things I try to do with conspiracies, I always try to go back to them after I'm no longer interested in them.
Mm-hmm.
Because after you go back without that sense of, oh, this is interesting, you can start going through the pieces to see if there's anything actually valid in there. Because every little group of conspiracy theorists does find something that's real. But then they don't get nothing they say gets believed because they also believe in the Kraft cheese monsters,
right,
and stuff like that, and it discredits them. But I got to go back and see what the lunar wave people know.
You ever think those ideas are inserted into? I mean, they insert some of these crackpot ideas into them so that they're not believed. But I don't know what would be the advantage of us not believing. I mean, us believing the moon was a solid rock when it's really evolved plasma.
I would say it's conflation, like the idea that if you can even think of a basic conspiracy, like you can't get people to even talk about something as boring as like the Federal Reserve being sketchy.
Mm-hmm.
And so now imagine you're sitting there trying to tell them why banking is kind of a not real system or whatever, that's not based on anything, and at the same time they're like, aren't you the guy that thinks the first couple of moon landings were staged? And boom, they're done. You definitely can't tell. I mean, I don't know if I believe that or not. I believe everything, but it discredits everything they're doing. So I think they do pump out really crazy conspiracies, because if you believe one thing, they'll feed the other part of the beast to make you believe something that's offensive to somebody.
Well, you're right, and I think that's the way we see a lot of conspiracy theories that have nuggets of truth being discredited. Probably plants in those groups are spreading those ideas and making them make sense with the viewpoint of that group. I'm not sure how much time we have left, but I feel like we should be winding it up pretty soon. But I had a couple more things I wanted to talk about today. We talked about, when we started that this wasn't even planned, the whole Civil War talk that we started today, or the national divorce talk. We were talking about Tesla moving to Texas because Elon, I've got to Joe Rogan and we kind of derailed and went somewhere else with it. But Joe Rogan moved down to Texas, and Michael Malice moved down to Texas, and a lot of other famous influencers are moving to Texas. Elon Musk moved to Texas. You got people moving to Tennessee. Speaking of Tesla, they're going to be flying a Tesla Falcon 9 rocket into space. They're going to be starting it pretty soon. It's a mission with NASA. There is a asteroid coming near us. It's about a half a mile wide, right? I think it's called Didymos. And
I have to remember that name so I can look into it and make up crazy stories.
Didymos. And this asteroid, I think the last time it came by us, it was about 3 million miles away from us. Now, the Earth is 250,000 miles away, so we're looking about 12 times farther than the Earth is how far this thing came last time. Didymos has some moons that are orbiting the asteroid. It's got enough mass to have a couple of moons. And one of these moons is about 500 feet wide. And if you've ever seen the movie Armageddon, you can guess what NASA's wanting to do with it. That's right. They're wanting to send Steve Buscemi and Ben Affleck and Bruce Willis for a suicide mission to land on the Mars. No.
Land on Mars.
Land on the asteroid while Nev Campbell or Liv Tyler. Liv Tyler. Yeah, that's her name. Liv Tyler cries at home. No, that was an entertaining movie, but I think even at the time when that came out, when we were teenagers, Tim, we were kind of like, I don't think that's going to quite work that way.
No, the whole movie didn't make sense.
No, but no, NASA's going to try it for real, but they're not actually going to try to blow the asteroid and the moon to the asteroid in half. What they're going to try to do is nudge it going about 6 kilometers a second with with something launched from a Falcon 9 rocket, and that will shift the orbit of this particular moon from the Didymos asteroid system. It'll shift the thing a fraction of 1%, and then they're going to measure how far that they can move this thing by shooting a rocket at it. So we've got that going on with Tesla, and then meanwhile,
they should just stop messing with stuff that's already happened in movies and gone bad.
Yeah, I have a feeling that they're going
Giant Meteor 2024. Well, you're about to get it, people. Yep. You're about to get it.
They imagine. I think it's around September of next year, 2022. The big year, Tim says.
That's the big year for numerology. 222. Build back better. BBB 222.
Right.
That's what. You don't have to believe it, but if you start paying attention to all those numbers and stuff, it'll drive you nuts. But 222 is a master builder number. It's for.
And then Master Builder, Build Back Better.
Build Back Better.
And what is Build Back Better? But it's not just Joe Biden's thing. He kind of adopted it, right? Because originally his slogan was "No Malarkey." Uh-oh, your dogs have got into something.
I think the meatloaf just hit the floor.
Uh-oh.
I'm having floor meatloaf tonight, folks.
All right. Just put plenty of ketchup on it, Tim. But yeah, back to the Tesla mission. They're going to be shooting shooting this rocket up in the sky to knock this thing back and test the amount of movement they get on its orbit. Now, to me, that sounds like a good way to really mess something up and like make it smash into.
Man, I know we didn't intend to go down this
unintended consequences.
I know we didn't mean to go down this one, but I'm starting to think that all these like stories of like don't mess with God, because then he gets mad and he floods the world sort of stuff. What if even the Tower of Babel, and before that, what if all this is us going, hey, we got a rocket, let's go contact the aliens, and the aliens come down here, start a giant war, and all the people, we finally kill the aliens, and everybody looks at each other and goes, no more rockets, and we think it's towers and stuff, and the whole thing is, we think science is like, that. Once upon a time that was magic, right?
Yeah.
And
science
stop messing with science.
Yeah.
Science just gets the aliens to come down here, starts a big war, it F's things up, and that's why we end up killing all the magicians, the scientists every time, because we don't want those guys coming down here. And we keep poking God, and this time we're going to go poke God's rock and expect a rock not to be like... It's like Starship Troopers. Do you remember what Starship Troopers, why they're going to fight the bugs?
I don't
Besides
remember.
the fact... Okay, Starship Troopers, they're fighting the bugs because the bugs are launching rocks at them from planets away. So we're being attacked by meteors, and here this whole time we've had the CIA and Joe Rogan and Randall Carlson, all these people saying, hey, we need to look to the sky. We got to start blowing the rocks out of the air. And that's predictive programming again. Other than the fact that Starship Troopers is actually a full-on fascist society, and that's what we're heading for.
Yeah, that's got some really interesting
pro-war.
If you'll go check that out, check that Starship Troopers out. If you haven't rewatched it in a while, think about what was going on in the early 2000s and the post 9/11 world.
Going back and watching that movie really tripped me out one night. It was on YouTube.
Yeah,
that's going to be a video I'm going to have to make for you right now. I'm going to show you how Bloodsport was a predictive programming for QAnon.
I'm looking forward to seeing that.
And Quigley Down Under.
Predictive.
Okay, I'll have. This is a totally different one. I'll get us off track. Can we end on that one?
We can, and the one I did want to mention one more thing, because we get back into predictive programming. We talked in a previous episode about how Star Trek was kind of predictive programming in a lot of ways, and as far as that being a given that we would have a planetary and galactic and interplanetary society and federation of different governing systems controlled by one major federation. So, guess what's happening? I think next week. I don't remember what it is, but William Shatner is going to be going to space, man. Or pretty close to it, closer than he's ever been. Yeah, he's going on a Blue Origin Jeff Bezos rocket. He's going to be flying up to the edge of the atmosphere and orbiting. I'm not sure how long, but I thought that's pretty cool. That's pretty Captain Kirk is finally going to get to.
I guess we need to look up and figure out which one's going higher, Blue Origin or Virgin.
But he needs to not wear a red shirt, on this mission. He probably will just as a joke, and then what would happen? Yeah. I've always liked. He's always been good. You see him make cameos on a lot of shows.
Well, he's aware that he's an entertainer.
Yeah,
and he hands it up, and that's what I like about it.
And even the Priceline commercials, they're pretty good for old.
That's kind of like what I like Shaq do.
Yeah,
because Shaq's like, I'm a former basketball player. What else can I do except for go goal bond? And it's like, well, I like Shaq. He's willing to do that because
I think they give that. They do the Shaq-a-roni pizza. They give that to some kind of charity. I don't remember what it is.
Do they? Okay.
But I know I'm not saying. I'm sure he does a lot of good stuff for people and makes a lot of money too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, and we're gonna wind it up here.
Here's what the issue is. I don't remember the name of the show. What you'll have to do is, if you have Netflix, is you go on Netflix and there's a competition show where engineers and bakers are teamed up, and the challenges never make sense. They're stupid. Like one's like you have to have a robot go up a course, and the cake can't fall off the whole time it's going and stuff. But the issue they ran into on this show is I'm only eavesdropping on this show doing stuff, and she's upstairs watching it. You got to notice real quick that the teams aren't evenly balanced. You'd have like you can have like a great baker and then just an awful engineer. Like one of them didn't know how to make wheels turn on a robot, and it's. Okay. But anyway, the point of getting to this is if you can find this show, most of the engineers, one of them works for like a greeting card company, just they're engineers. One of them is a NASA. Like she works for NASA, but she's younger, right?
Okay.
And I thought, well, okay, it's okay if she's a student. But it turns out she works for NASA and she apparently made suits for NASA. And she's by far the worst one.
Like their spacesuits?
Yeah, like stuff they're supposed to use. Unless she's lied and she's actually like more of like a fashion sort of engineer.
Yeah, maybe she designed.
My whole problem with it is like one of the challenges. This guy makes a whole dress out of like essentially melted candy, I guess, and it looks crazy. It looks like something out of like I don't know, fill in the blank here movie. And all her job is to make a set of wings that flap.
Okay.
And I would think if I'd made suits for NASA, I could handle 2 flapping wings.
I think of a couple different ways to do that. I'm not an engineer.
They're just going all over the place. And you can tell the poor baker that's with her is just like... Because every time he's like, he's sitting there showing her how to do stuff. Like they made a golf course where the thing turned. And she was so proud of herself because she cut a piece of wood out that turned successfully. And I'm not ragging on females. There's like 4 or 5 other female engineers that are making like... stuff that goes up ramps and stuff, and it's just like that worries me. The NASA one is the one that can't make a set of flapping wings, but the guy that makes greeting cards is making like 9 tiny little dainty butterflies flapping their wings. NASA, go hire that guy.
Yeah, hire the butterfly guy. Let's quit hopping around on these spacewalks tethered, and let's use these butterfly wings and get this thing going.
And if it's about sex, there's 3 other engineers competing up. I think his name's like Menudo or something like that. Get him and get the other 3 girls, hire them, and get rid of the girl that can't make wings flap. She's going to get a bunch of people killed.
For real.
So anyway, maybe Shatner. What if she designs his suit? Anyway.
He'll karate chop and roll his way out of whatever situation that you put him into. But, yeah, so we're looking at Bill Shatner going in space. We're looking at... you're talking about the engineer for NASA, and that kind of gets right back to what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago. I wanted you guys to watch the movie A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. Now, Tim and I both found it on YouTube, and you do have to actually look a little bit. I think mine was like the 4th or 5th result, but it's like an hour and something long, and it's worth checking out because we do want to talk about... some of the inconsistencies with it, and I just explained to you, I'm a guy who's very interested in space. I don't believe a bunch of the stories that we hear. A lot of conspiracy theories about space, but I do think there are some very curious things about the first moon trip, especially, and a lot of the video, a lot of the documentation, a lot of the stuff surrounding that. So I do want to talk about that again. Another thing we briefly touched on a little bit tonight, and I kind of predictively programmed you on it intentionally with our talk about the smart poles and smart home, because I do want to do a program on COVID-19 and the Great Reset and what that involves, and kind of where that comes from, who's doing it, how it even trickles down to us on the local level, to where even we see the parts of it here in Carter County and Northeast Tennessee. But this is going to be a bit of an involved video for me, because I do want to give you guys some sources and give you some links, and maybe even put documents and videos clipped into the video. So that's going to take some editing on my part, and I'm not going to be able to get that up tonight. So that's why we didn't do that tonight. But I'm going to head and be getting that ready, so when Tim and I have the talk, that I'll have documentation for you to show you all the stuff that I'm talking about.
Yeah, because we're really aware this sort of framework. We are wrong probably 40% of the time, just shouting facts that are kind of half true. I do it 75% of the time when I'm on here talking, because I don't really want to look it up. But if you're going to start going into stuff where you're making claims, he wants to have his presentation ready. That's what it's about.
Well, when I'm telling you that I think that these smart poles and these smart homes are a bad thing, basically this is a culmination of why I think that's a bad thing, and how these could be used against us in a worst case scenario. Because even if a worst case scenario never happens, we're still putting ourselves in a very vulnerable position for individual freedom, and that's very important to me. I don't want my kids to grow up less free than I did. They're definitely growing up safer than I did, and I think we have to have a good balance between safety and liberty. But I think we're going a little too far, and the safest place in the world is in a prison cell with nobody else around you, Tim. So,
some of us.
Well, that's.
Some people don't need to live by themselves.
Well, I'm saying if you were left in a place where you couldn't move and couldn't do anything, well, nothing could happen to you. But it wouldn't be safe for you. And
if you want to do a callback to your reference from a week or two ago, you could say that the people on Wally's spaceship were the safest.
Oh, on Wally's spaceship, yeah, in the movie Wally. Yeah, they were safe. They didn't have to worry about anything, and they didn't have any responsibilities either. But also, they didn't have the ability or the freedom to go anywhere or do anything that they wanted to, and they forgot what it was like to be human. So it's kind of right down to there's a lot of movies about it. You've seen them, but I guess it basically boils down to there's a certain amount of risk with life that I think we have to accept if we want to be free to, like I talked about, bodily autonomy, freedom to travel, freedom to make the choices we want to make, freedom to express ourselves, freedom to protect ourselves, and freedom to help shape the community that we live in, rather than having the community that we lived in being shaped by people who know nothing about us, live nowhere near us, and don't have any investments in a good outcome in our city, other than how they can profit off of it, or how they can use it, not how they can be a part of it or contribute to it. So I think we will get back together next week and we'll discuss this again, because I'm going to go over what the Great Reset is, how it's being implemented, what it entails, and what you can do if you don't like it, what kind of things we can do to kind of not to fight against it, but to kind of go on as a society in our own way. And I'm not saying that Tim is in agreement with me on this. He may not be. But
I'll put context when you get done.
But the important thing is, this is just my opinion. Tim may have his own, but I felt it strong enough that I would share it with you.
I mean, I don't really think that one's really that controversial in my opinion. For context, 20 years ago, the Great Reset was a term that us troll conspiracy theorists were talking about, jokingly called, because everything that they're using now is stuff that we named a long time ago. It's just finally the situation we like I'm unique. What we do is communities of conspiracy theories came up with names for situations that could happen, and now that situations are coming up, they're taking our lingo.
Mm-hmm.
Like we came up with the Great Reset decades and decades ago. Not me, but I remember reading that from people that they wouldn't think, people that Alex Jones probably would think was off his rocker, but yet those guys keep getting a couple of things right here and there, and so those words get adopted. That's why there's always a lingo for it.
Mm-hmm.
The word already exists because there's people out there thinking of awful situations, a la Black Mirror. I mean, those people. I mean, you know. I had a verbal cul-de-sac and I couldn't get out of it.
Yeah, I just kind of went deer in the headlights there, just stared at the camera for a second. But yeah, that's what we're finishing up tonight, guys. Just think of all the different movies, television programs that you saw where you saw something happen, and then in real life something very similar happened. Maybe right after, or maybe a few years later. It happens a lot. So that leaves some people to question, is this done intentionally? Or
is it monkey see, monkey do, is how they put it.
Yeah.
Like, are they making you do that by pre-planning an idea in your head, and then when the situation that motivates you to do that, you already know what you're supposed to do? And
here's the other thing. When you see that movie, like Independence Day, what is, what's the answer if they're an alien invasion? Well, all the governments of the world team up and fight it together, and you don't have time to ask questions about, whose side you're on, and so it's basically like, okay, here's our problem. Aliens are invading. All right, so you watch the movie and you see the reaction to that, right? And then they give you the idea of what the response to that is going to be, so that when that response comes, whatever the situation is, whether it's aliens or we think it's aliens or some other crisis entirely, maybe a global pandemic.
Maybe a moon flying off a rocket and hitting us a year from now because we spoke God.
Well, we just assume that the answer is to form a world government to deal with the problem, because that's what they've done in all the movies. Or is it just that we do it because we see it in the movies? Maybe they don't intend, maybe nobody is intending for it to happen. Maybe it's just art and we copy it. It's a question a lot of people have, and it's a question we'll leave you with tonight as we tie up this episode of the Iron Mountain Hour. We hope you'll join us next Sunday while we talk about the Great Reset and COVID-19, and we will see you then. Like and subscribe, and we also started an LBRY Odyssey channel, so we'll put the link to that down in the comments, because there may be some things that we're not even able to say on YouTube.
Well, Odyssey, can you even do live on YouTube anymore?
You can do live, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can. There's a couple platforms for live, but we're in the building audience phase right now. But I'd really like to build up that LBRY.
I'd like to have some live
Odyssey
streams, because I know Odyssey has a better streaming platform as far as being able to communicate with people than YouTube does.
Yeah.
For reasons that would bore you, but I would like to do some IRL stuff just to kind of bounce it off of the crowd to see how stupid some of my thoughts really are versus did I say something worth hearing? And I just think that's interesting.
I think everything you have is worth hearing, Tim, and I look forward to hearing what you have on my topic next week. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.